The leather seats of the limousine were cool and empty, just like the penthouse apartment waiting for him at the end of this drive. Maxwell Donovan sat in the back of his company car, scrolling through emails on his phone while the city blurred past the tinted windows. At 37, he had built Donovan Financial Group into one of the most successful investment firms on the East Coast. But the victory felt hollow on this particular evening. It was his birthday, and he was spending it alone. His driver, Thomas, had asked if he wanted to go anywhere special for dinner. Maxwell had waved off the suggestion, saying he would eat at home. The truth was, he had no appetite for restaurant meals eaten in solitude for waiters who sang obligatory birthday songs to a table set for one. The limo slowed at a red light in a neighborhood Maxwell rarely noticed. One of those transitional areas where the city's wealth gave way to struggling shops and modest apartments. Maxwell glanced up from his phone, momentarily distracted by movement outside his window. A little girl stood on the sidewalk, perhaps 4 years old, with a mass of golden curls that caught the late afternoon sun. She wore a light blue sweater and clutched a stuffed bunny to her chest. Her eyes, wide and curious, were fixed on the limousine with the kind of wonder only children possess. Maxwell found himself staring back, something in her earnest gaze catching his attention. The child took a step closer to the car, then another, until she was standing right beside his window. She pressed one small hand against the glass, the stuffed bunny dangling from her other arm. Then she did something that made Maxwell's heart stop. She leaned close to the window and whispered, her breath fogging the glass. Her voice muffled but just barely audible through the expensive soundproofing. "You need a wife. And I need a dad." Maxwell sat frozen, his phone forgotten in his hand. The light turned green, but he held up his hand to Thomas, signaling him to wait. The little girl remained at the window, her expression completely serious, as if she had just stated the most obvious truth in the world. "Sir?" Thomas asked from the front seat, uncertainty in his voice. Maxwell pressed a button to lower his window, and the city sounds rushed in along with the cool evening air. "Hello," he said to the little girl, his voice gentler than he had heard it in years. "That's quite a statement you just made." "It's true," the little girl said with the absolute certainty of childhood. "You were looking sad in there all by yourself. And I don't have a daddy, so maybe we could help each other." Before Maxwell could respond, a woman came rushing out of a nearby laundromat, her face pale with panic. She was young, perhaps in her late 20s, with the same golden hair as the child, pulled back in a hasty ponytail. She wore simple jeans and a faded sweater, her arms full of clean laundry. "Stella," the woman cried out, relief and fear mixing in her voice. "What have I told you about wandering off? I turned my back for 1 second to fold the sheets, and you were gone." She reached the little girl and pulled her back from the car, her eyes meeting Maxwell's with a mixture of apology and weariness. "I'm so sorry, sir. She didn't mean to bother you. Please forgive us." "She wasn't bothering me," Maxwell said, realizing it was true. She was just being honest. The woman's cheeks flushed pink. "She has a very active imagination." "Come on, Stella. We need to get home." "But Mommy," Stella protested, clutching her bunny tighter. "He looks lonely. And we're lonely too. You said so last night when you thought I was sleeping. You said you wish Stella had a father who would stay." The woman's face went from pink to crimson, and Maxwell saw tears spring to her eyes. "Stella, that's private. You can't just tell strangers things like that." "Why not?" Stella asked with the logic of a 4-year-old. "You always say telling the truth is important." Maxwell found himself stepping out of the limousine, much to Thomas's surprise. He stood on the sidewalk, this man in his $1,000 suit facing this woman with her laundry and her 2 honest daughter. "I'm Maxwell," he said, extending his hand. "Maxwell Donovan. And your daughter is right. I was sitting in that car feeling sorry for myself because it's my birthday and I have no one to spend it with." So her observation was more accurate than she could have known. The woman shifted her laundry to shake his hand, her grip tentative. "I'm Claire," she said quietly. "Claire Morrison. And this is Stella." "I'm really sorry about what she said. She doesn't understand boundaries yet." "I liked what she said," Maxwell replied, surprising himself with the admission. It was the most honest thing anyone said to me in months. Most people tell me what they think I want to hear. He looked down at Stella, who was watching the exchange with bright, curious eyes. You're very observant, Stella. How did you know I needed a wife? Because you were all alone in that big fancy car, Stella said, as if this explained everything. And you looked like my mommy looks sometimes when she thinks I'm not watching sad and lonely. Mommy says everybody needs somebody, so I thought maybe you needed us. And we needed you. Claire's eyes filled with tears again, and she hugged the laundry basket closer. I should get her home. I apologize for the intrusion. Wait, Maxwell heard himself say. It's my birthday, and I was planning to spend it alone, eating takeout in an empty apartment. Would you consider joining me for dinner instead? Both of you. Nothing fancy, just a meal between three people who, according to Stella, all need somebody. Claire stared at him as if he had suggested they fly to the moon. That's very kind, but we couldn't possibly. You don't know us. We're strangers. Strangers are just friends we haven't met yet, Stella announced, clearly quoting something she had heard before. That's what Miss Jenny at daycare says. Maxwell smiled, the first genuine smile he had felt in weeks. Miss Jenny sounds very wise. Please, Claire, I'm not asking for anything except company for dinner. You can choose the restaurant somewhere public and safe. I just don't want to spend my birthday alone. And your daughter has already made it more memorable than any birthday I've had in years. Claire looked from Maxwell to Stella, uncertainty and something else, maybe hope flickering across her tired face. Why would you want to have dinner with us? We're just ordinary people. You're clearly someone important. That's exactly why, Maxwell said quietly. I'm surrounded by important people every day, people who want something from me or want to be seen with me. Your daughter wanted nothing except to point out a truth. That's rare. That's valuable. Please say yes. Stella tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mommy, can we go? I'm hungry and he seems nice. And it's his birthday. We can't let him be alone on his birthday. Claire bit her lip, the internal struggle clear on her face. Finally, she nodded slowly. Okay, but somewhere simple, and I insist on paying for our own meals. Absolutely not, Maxwell said. It's my birthday, which means I choose the rules. And the birthday rule is that I pay. But you can choose the restaurant. 20 minutes later, they were sitting in a small Italian restaurant that Claire knew, a family-owned place with checkered tablecloths and the smell of fresh bread filling the air. Thomas had driven them, looking bemused but saying nothing. Stella sat between them in a booster seat, her bunny occupying a chair of its own, chattering happily about everything from her favorite color to the cat she had seen that morning. Claire was quieter, still uncertain, but gradually relaxing as Maxwell asked gentle questions and listened with genuine interest. He learned that Claire was a widow, that her husband had died in a car accident when Stella was just 6 months old. She worked 2 jobs, one as a receptionist during the day and another cleaning offices at night, barely making enough to cover rent and daycare. She was exhausted, overwhelmed, and doing her best to give Stella a happy childhood despite the struggles. I talked to her about her father, Claire said softly, glancing at Stella, who was absorbed in coloring on her placemat. I want her to know she had a dad who loved her, even if he's not here anymore. But lately, she's been asking why other kids have daddies who come to school events and push them on swings. I don't know how to explain that life isn't fair in a way a 4-year-old can understand. Maxwell felt something tighten in his chest. My parents died when I was young, he said. I was raised by my grandfather. He was a good man, but he was old and tired, and I spent a lot of time alone. I learned early that if I wanted anything in life, I had to build it myself. So, I built a company, a reputation, a fortune, but I forgot to build a life around it. He looked at Stella, who had abandoned her coloring to listen intently. Your daughter reminded me of that today. Out of the mouths of babes, as they say, dinner arrived, and they ate together, conversation flowing more easily now. Maxwell found himself laughing at Stella's stories, enchanted by her innocent wisdom and unfiltered honesty. Claire slowly opened up, sharing her dreams of going back to school someday to become a teacher and give Stella a more stable life. Why teaching? Maxwell asked. Because teachers changed my life, Claire said simply. When my parents were fighting, when things were hard at home, my teachers were the ones who made me feel seen and valued. I want to do that for other kids. As the evening wore on, Maxwell felt something shifting inside him, like a door he had kept locked for years was slowly opening. This woman with her quiet strength. This child with her fearless honesty. They were showing him what he had been missing in his carefully controlled existence. When dessert arrived, a small birthday cake Claire had quietly arranged with the restaurant, and Stella sang happy birthday with more enthusiasm than pitch. Maxwell felt tears prick his eyes for the first time since his grandfather's funeral. Make a wish, Stella commanded. Her eyes shining in the candlelight, Maxwell closed his eyes and, for the first time in years, made a wish that had nothing to do with business or success. He wished for more moments like this, for connection, for the courage to open his carefully guarded heart. As Thomas drove them home later, dropping Claire and Stella at their modest apartment building, Maxwell found himself asking for Claire's phone number. "I'd like to see you both again," he said. "If that would be okay." Claire hesitated, then nodded. "Stella was right," she said softly. "You do seem lonely. And so am I. Maybe we could be friends. Just friends to start." "Friend sounds perfect," Maxwell agreed. Over the following months, Maxwell became a regular presence in their lives. He showed up for Stella's daycare performances, took them to the zoo on weekends, and found himself spending more time living and less time working. He helped Claire enroll in night classes, covering her tuition with a scholarship from a foundation he quietly established for single parents pursuing education. Claire resisted his help at first, proud and independent, but eventually accepted it with grace when he explained that she was giving him something far more valuable in return, a reason to remember what truly mattered. Stella appointed herself matchmaker, constantly engineering situations to push her mother and Maxwell together. Her efforts were transparent and endearing, and both adults pretended not to notice while secretly grateful for her intervention. One evening, nearly a year after that first encounter outside the limousine, Maxwell took Claire and Stella to a small park where Stella loved to feed the ducks. As the little girl ran ahead, Maxwell took Claire's hand. "Your daughter was right that day," he said softly. "I didn't need a wife, and she needed a dad. But more than that, I needed both of you to remind me how to live, how to love, how to be human again." Claire smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "We needed you too, not for your money or your success, but for you, for the man who was kind enough to listen to a 4-year-old's wisdom, brave enough to step out of his protected world, and generous enough to open his heart." They were married 6 months later in a simple ceremony, with Stella as the flower girl, clutching the same stuffed bunny she had held that day by the limousine, and Maxwell Donovan, who had spent years building an empire alone, finally understood that the greatest success was not measured in wealth or power, but in the love you give and receive. Sometimes wisdom comes from the most unexpected sources: a child's whispered observation, an honest moment of vulnerability, a willingness to step out of a limousine and into life. And sometimes, the family we need finds us in the most unlikely ways at exactly the moment we need them most. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of unexpected connections, honest hearts, and the courage to embrace second chances. Comment below and tell us about a time when a child's wisdom changed your perspective, or when an unexpected encounter brought blessings you never imagined. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.